We're going to go live here in just a minute, try to get started. We hate to, nothing worse than getting a late start, in my opinion.
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Co-Chairman.
Thank you. I just wanted to let the committee know, I had agreed to do a presentation on missing and murdered Indigenous women to the Veterans Administration. And it's a virtual presentation. So I've got my computer set up in a separate room and it will go from 9 until a little after 10. So I just want to apologize to the people who are in the room testifying. It is not you, it's me. I had this prior commitment and we'll definitely return for the rest of the meeting. I won't miss any other portions of it.
Thank you. Heather, we'll wait for your cue. We're live. So Heather, could we do roll call, please?
Senator Case.
Excused.
Senator Salazar. Representative Blackburn.
Here.
Representative Clifford.
Excused.
Chairman Ellis.
Here.
Chairman Larson.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We'd like to welcome everybody to the Select Committee on Tribal Relations. This is our second meeting of the interim, our October meeting. As we normally do, this is kind of an intimate group that meets, and we like to include everybody in the details of the meeting. So we'd like to, we'll start up here with Representative Blackburn. We're going to come around this way today, and then we're going to come over here to DCI and work. We would just appreciate if everybody would identify themselves and who they represent, and then we'll go ahead and get into the remainder of the meeting, Madam Chairman. So Representative Blackburn.
I'm Jim Blackburn. I represent House District 42 in Cheyenne.
My name is Affy Ellis. I represent Senate District 8 in Cheyenne.
My name is Lloyd Larson. I live in Lander and represent House District 54.
I'm Senator Tim Salazar. I live in Riverton and I represent Senate District 26.
I didn't catch our LSO staff. We're going to go there before we come over to you guys.
My name's Heather Jarvis, and I am one of your LSO staff.
Donna Shippen, LSO staff.
Heather Hunter, LSO staff.
Councilman Ute, welcome. We're just winding up introducing ourselves. Could we ask you to likewise, and we'll proceed. Thank you. Committee, for your information, if you're not aware, our Heather.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. There's something that kicked us offline. And so Heather said that just to make you aware of that we're kicked back offline and we're trying to get back online.
Heather, let us know when we're back on. Housekeeping committee, if you didn't hear John's comments on our microphones, you push the button. We could all be on at the same time, but more than 6 get on, it's going to start kicking one of us off. So just be mindful of your mics and try to turn them off when they're not in use. Thanks, John, for providing that. And we'd like to thank CWC for accommodating us this morning. They're always very, very gracious and very kind. We'd also make note, the college has a mask mandate for the protection of their students and trying to prevent the spread of COVID. We ask how they would like us to proceed, and they would really like us when we're out and about in the halls and out around where we're mingling to be masked up. And we know that as you're presenting, if we can distance, that it's hard to hear with your mask on, but if we distance, maybe you could take your mask on as you're off while you're presenting to the committee. You're not required to, of course, it's your choice. But when we're out and about, we'd ask you to be respectful of the college's request and try to stay masked up. So if you see me without my mask, growl at me and I'll put it on. Okay, Madam Chairman, any opening remarks from you before we start? So our first item on the agenda today, and maybe we could ask our two councilmen who are here if they would, they'd like to come up, and Ryan, maybe you as well, if you're well, and we'd like to get some updates on the impacts of COVID-19, and then kind of how you're moving forward, plans to prepare, or as you're responding to this last round of COVID, maybe your vaccination efforts, and then kind of how some of the projects that you've been considering and maybe perhaps implementing with the ARPA funds are of interest to us. We're excited to see how that's moving forward for you and how we can help in any way. Councilman Ute. Yeah, there you go.
Good morning, committee, co-chair, chairman. So Eastern Shoshone Council Chairman John St. Clair I think he's on his way, but he has a lot of the in-depth information for the benefits and improvements part. I can kind of represent us a little bit on our efforts concerning health updates, COVID-19 impacts and our needs. I can say that this is a big learning experience for us as we're going along. I can speak a little bit. Now, I kind of wanted to mention we're kind of a little bit late to the game compared to the Northern Arapaho tribe, but we rolled out a vaccine incentive. We're doing $100 per shot or $200 for a complete vaccination. This doesn't include boosters. Yesterday and today, they're actually doing it today. So Karen Snyder, our COVID coordinator, is busy doing that, but that's going very well. I believe our first day we had like 750 people that picked up. I think we had about 100 new vaccinations, which is pretty good. That's pretty good for us. We're also going to do a much larger vaccine. I would call it a reward for our entire tribal membership if they're vaccinated. We're going to do. We haven't discussed how much we're going to give, but once we reach a 70%, just like the Northern Arapaho have done, that will roll out as well. I can say that it's going very well. I think it's, for the most part, people have been pretty receptive to it. I think the IHS reported that just this week, starting Monday, they're getting at least 20 to 30 people per day showing up, getting at least their first vaccine, which is really good. We had a hurdle getting people to at least take that first step into getting their very first shot. They're really apprehensive of it. They didn't think, why should I get it? I feel like a lot of the community members feelings towards it was most of them were on the fence. It wasn't really one way or the other concerning politics or anything. It was just, I don't know if I should get it or not. That's kind of good news for us. So with the vaccine incentive, we were able to kind of push those people towards getting that first vaccine, which like I said, is really good. Yes.
Could you tell me again? I thought I heard you say 750 to date. Is that right?
That picked up their incentive. That doesn't mean,
Okay.
I think we're actually getting near 1,000. So a portion of that actually got their first vaccine at the incentive drive.
And your goal is to, before you do a tribe-wise incentive is 70%. Where do you think you're at?
I think
now?
we're now, I think after this week, we should be sitting around 50%.
Good for you. Okay, please proceed.
Okay, as far as some initiatives, or I wouldn't really call them initiatives, I would just call them goals. It's really hard to pin down specific initiatives that the tribe's going to do. But as far as goal-wise, obviously trying to drive cases down. We're trying to drive hospitalizations through the floor, deaths. We have had some deaths within our community, our tribal membership. Ultimately, we're trying to, like I said, drive those through the floor. And I think the way to do that, and what we've been doing, is implementing, we don't do really like what we call mandates, but we do put like pretty strict guidelines out there, especially for our employees. To date, I don't think we've had one employee to employee infection, which is really, really good. Masking up indoors, we've implemented that for the past month for all of our employees. Also, our COVID quarantine for our employees it's mandatory if you test positive. So you get an automatic 10 days. We are using our ARP funds to help cover those mandatory quarantines for our employees if they have to take that time out, if they get a positive case. Now, if they are just in contact with somebody that's positive, they also have an option to take 3 days off if they're worried and feel that they do need to take a test. So we do give them some administrative leave for that test, but only COVID leave for a positive.
On the ARPA funds there, Councilman, did I understand that correctly? Then you can use the ARPA funds to help cover their salary or while they're in quarantine.
There will be a bank for that, yes.
Yeah.
As far as, because I am not a health official, nor do I represent myself as one. I feel like our tribal health department is doing really well. They're doing the best that they can. They supply every program that we have with the correct PPE. If they need any masks, they need hand sanitizers, they're there. They help us. They do help the programs come up with plans for quarantine should a problem arise or they just have questions. So what we're trying to do, especially with our employees, is we're trying to mitigate panic. So if we have an employee who tests positive, usually a panic sets in with the rest of the employees. They think, well, I got to go home now. I might be positive, so I got to go home. Tribal Health has done an excellent job at mitigating people just going into a panic and then leaving work just because they think they're positive. Just because you think you're positive doesn't mean you are positive. I think this time around, we're more concerned with keeping the programs operational. So with some of these ARP funding, I think we threw it towards that idea where we can keep things operational, but ultimately safety is key there.
Testing, I mean, do you do testing during the week, or they're doing weekly testing or anything of that nature?
Yes, Chairman. We do for the employees. I think we do like a weekly, you would call it voluntary. It's not mandatory, but it's a voluntary, a random COVID testing, the nasal swabs. Those usually come in within about 3 days. So for the council ourselves, we do one every single week. I think that works fairly well. If we can get the testing rates up, then we actually know who's positive, who's not. We can come to work. Like I said, with the employees, we haven't had a case. We haven't had a transmission with the employees, so that's really good. What we're seeing is they're bringing it after they go home. They do whatever they do. They go to work, and then they're positive. So that's something that I think just everybody's gonna have to deal with.
So the other question I have, and we asked it last time when we was here, when we had Winver Cares visiting with us, is you've done your vaccinations, or have you had any reactions or anybody that's had a reaction to vaccine to date?
You mean like a side effect? Not that I know of, not that I'm aware of. And even if it was, I think it's very mild. It's like, fevers, chills, things like that. But I don't think we've had anything where it needed any hospitalization. Not that I know of, at least.
I've asked that last time and again this time because I think that the tribes are ahead of the state per capita on vaccinations. And one of the big concerns we see around the state, or that you see on social media and stuff, is the concern about side effects or ill effects of that. And so it's nice to see where the vaccinations have taken place, to what type of reactions there have been. And it appears that those are pretty minimal.
Absolutely, Chairman. I think the misinformation from social media is more of a danger than the vaccine itself at this point.
Chairman St. Clair, good morning to you. Appreciate you being here. Councilman Ute has been doing an excellent job in bringing us up to date on COVID impacts and needs, and anything that you would like to add to that. And then if you'd like to take a moment and bring us up to date on kind of your the improvements and accomplishments from the ARPA funds, we're excited and interested to hear what you guys have been working on.
And Chairman, I'd also like to add that for our employees for the Shoshone tribe, we have not at this point mandated a vaccine for our employees as in terms of employment. Although we strongly encourage it at this point, and it's not about safety, it's not about politics, it's not about anything like that. We just feel like we're best leaving it up to our program directors. If the program director believes that they need to implement a vaccine mandate for their employee, we do allow them to do that. We just haven't across the board made one for all of our employees.
Interesting. Thank you. Questions, committee? Any other questions? Well done. Chairman St. Clair, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Representative Larson. It's good to be here this morning before you. And the rest of the panel, Senator Cage. When I seen that item on your agenda about healthcare updates and COVID, I sort of interpreted that as even going back to the CARES. So I'll just give you a little bit of information about our CARES program. That what we did a major project on weatherization for persons over 62 years old. We spent about $2 million of it for roofs, windows, doors, and siding. We did give a cash assistance advance to individual tribal members of $1,200. And the rationale for that was, first of all, the income from the oil and gas revenues had plunged. You're all aware of the market, what happened, and 85% of that income is distributed per capita to our tribal members. So the households took a big hit during that period of time. So that was intended to alleviate that. I don't know how far Councilman Youth had explained the present ARPA funding. And it's probably public record. We received about $28 million based on enrollment and our employment. Each tribe, I don't know what I can't reveal what the Arapaho tribe, I just, rumors, but I'm not sure what they received, but we've felt like we have three governments on the reservation, two sovereign nations, but we also have a joint government that operates to carry out the programs that are shared. Examples of those programs, well, the programs that are related to the land. Water, environment, and those kinds of programs. And we have a number of employees, and right off the top of my head, I can't tell you how many joint employees we have. But under the structure for the funding, the tribes are eligible with their employment numbers, but not our joint program. So we didn't get anything to fund our joint government out of this structure. When the Honorable Senator Holland was present, we ran that by her and followed up with a letter that our concern with that. It's not only for any of that issue goes beyond Interior Department, it's to the federal government generally. So we hopefully that we can get some at least special recognition for our government. And just request it today for the state to support that issue for us. We sent a letter last month, but we haven't heard back. Our next step might be to consult with the delegation in Washington and try to push this issue forward, because we realize that under the structure that the federal government has, they only recognize tribes individually, and then on other reservations, they might have a government they recognize involving like consolidated tribes, and just do that one recognition for those. So our situation here on Wind River is unique. Two sovereign nations occupying the same territory, but at the same time operating a third government.
Mr. Chairman, so that's really interesting. We tried last year because previously we had the funding coming in for programs to the reservation, and then the tribes would have to take that and divide it. And we worked really hard under the CARES Act to get that funding to come to the respective reservations. And I must confess that I hadn't contemplated the need for the joint employees as well. And so your point is valid, and I think that we'd like to support that effort. If we could maybe ask you guys to kind of give us an idea, follow up to Heather on the number of employees that you guys cover with that, so that we can, in our letter, that maybe we can kind of address that in support of what you're trying to do there.
Thank you, Representative Larson. We will do that. We'll follow up with our number of joint employees. One of the issues I didn't mention in use of the care funds was that we infused within our solid waste program about $300,000. We purchased a 2014 Western Star Semi with a side dump. It wasn't brand new, but it's a good vehicle. We paid about $90,000 for that. The next one was 2019 F-350 flatbed truck with a welder, compressor, and snowplow. And that was around $60,000. And we also purchased a trailer and then some canisters, 3 sizes of canisters for the solid waste. And there was 6 of them, 2 30 cubic yards, 2 25 cubic yards, and 2 also 15 cubic yards. And those totaled $32,000. So we're interested in doing and meeting our challenge with the solid waste, and realize that there's a lot more to be done. We're committed to, and this will come up later, so in the next subject, so we'll talk a little more in specifics about not only what we've infused, but what our outlook is in the future for the proposal from Representative Larson. I wasn't here to hear what Councilman you did say about our funding. One of our, now I'm talking about the ARP funding now. We did you talk about the incentives?
And Mr. Chairman, Councilman, you just really give us a good update on what you are doing for the healthcare vaccinations and incentives and that sort of stuff. And he indicated to us that he was going to leave driving through the ARP funding to you.
Okay. And for your records, I can leave you the notice that was posted in the community regarding to explain all that. Okay. The other item that we're purchasing some land, and I'm not sure that was an equestrian farm. There's trust land and there's fee land on that area, and we're looking at using those to comply with the requirements of ARPA, which is economic development, health and safety. And so the house, which is like a 3 or 4 bedroom house, hopefully we might be using that for a shelter for victims of crime, or maybe in treatment for adults or juveniles that need treatment. So those are the issues we're looking at. Those are the uses we're looking at for that house. We also we're looking at, and it was looked at before with the previous owners, was to utilize some of that land for a wind farm, turbines, and hopefully be able to maybe sell that electricity to High Plains, or and that's economic development, providing income for us. We're looking at also using the arenas for some kind of horse project, whether it be just as a stable or perhaps horse therapy for people in treatment. Those are the possibilities that we're looking at. And we feel it's a very good investment because, as you all know, land is a good investment. It's just that we need to connect it to the regulations regarding the ARPA funds. We're still looking at, with the ARPA money. Of course, it's early. We have, I think, until the end of 2104 or 24, yeah, which is 3 more years. So we're at the early stages of our using this. And some of the other, we want to continue that weatherization because we didn't participate. Everyone didn't participate, and we're considering lowering the age for eligibility, maybe down to 50, 55, so that we can access more households. Many of our families have multi-generational households. And so it's important that, the benefits of it will reach out to more people, elders, young people, those living in those households. So we feel that's an important project to continue and to expand. that pretty much, we have a list of, like a wish list that we're looking at. Our biggest wish list, of course, was to do some structure, construction, building things, but that's not allowed under ARPA. We're looking at other sources, getting the grant writer to look at to other sources to say, build a new cultural center for our cultural program, but not only that, for our archives, the history. We got our historian on the Shoshone Business Council is John Washke. And so he has a lot of knowledge about the history of the tribe and how to organize something like that. So that's outside the ARPA funding, but those are the kinds of things we're not just limiting our scope of what we want to do to the ARPA funding. We also have a project that a committee is initiated to reopen the hot springs at Fort Washington. The roadblock there is that it's, I don't know if it's a roadblock, but it's both tribes own the land jointly. And so we need to deal with that, either with a joint venture or with an agreement from one tribe with the other to go forward. So that's kind of where we're at on that. But it's an important project to us. The other possible uses for the ARPA funding that we're looking at is just to improve some of the existing facilities. Our structure that houses a lot of our programs was a joint building at the tribal complex, and we need to straighten out the Shoshone tribe is asking for the west end of that, which I believe was agreed to years ago, but just needs to be formalized so that we can put in the funding to improve that part of the building. There's major repairs that have to be done in the ceiling. There's bats that come in and out. And so it's really isn't safe or healthy for our people to be working in there. So that's an important project that we need to move forward on immediately. We're looking at putting some money into our Warren Valley Senior Citizen Center, equipment, just things that are there, like some appliances, coolers, freezers, furniture, drain system for our kitchen, plumbing issues, I guess you might call it. And the same thing that we're doing with the individuals, exterior doors, weatherization, air conditioning, carpet perhaps. And those are the kinds of things we're looking at, not only with that structure, but other tribal structures that we own. We want to work with our housing, Shoshone housing, to work together to see so that we can improve the houses that they manage, but not to duplicate what they're doing. We want to look at doing some work with Rocky Mountain Hall, some equipment that's needed there, floor scrubber. I think our air conditioning system needs to be looked at there. And we're looking at all of our enterprises and our, like the Morning Star Manor. We need to improve the facilities, equipment purchasing. We need to infuse some money into our Shoshone enterprise that does work for tribal members and actually is a business that we can that does work on or off the reservation. that construction work, plumbing, electrical. And at one point, it had done offered more services than it is now. And we want to get back to that so that we have a plumber, electrician on board to where if a need comes up on the weekend, we can get somebody on it. Some of these other things I'll get into, I'll talk about during the solid waste discussion about our, we received some funding from the EPA. It's for both tribes, but I'll talk about that a little later. So that's pretty much what I wanted to bring out. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Questions, committee members? Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Chairman St. Clair, thank you for being here. And Councilman, thank you very much. How can we best help you with this effort to get the funding for the joint programs? We could also write letters to the delegation. We could write letters to people that you suggest coming from the committee. I think we should maybe pass a resolution supporting that. It's such a great irony that you're forced to have a joint arrangement and the only tribes that do and have this situation, and yet it's not recognized by the same government that forces you to do that. So I would love to help, and I think the committee we'll do our best.
Thank you, Senator Case. We could send you right now a copy of the letter that we sent to Secretary Holland,
Okay.
which was last month. So that's a starting point, perhaps. I think what we should do is develop some kind of a form letter for you to send in. It would be, I believe, to our delegation and to our to the secretary that and we will need to put in other instances of where there's been denial of recognition of the joint government and denial of benefits that are available. What I talked about was just one example.
Sure.
In this ARP funding and COVID funding. And that kind of stood out to us because, we were trying to count those employees separately. The Shoshone tribe was trying to say, well, we want to count half of these employees. Well, the answer we got was, well, you have to have 51%, just beyond half. So we couldn't get beyond one half. And so that we didn't get any funding for our joint. And we do have income losses, revenue losses for that also, because entirely our government is funded by the revenue from our oil and gas.
Absolutely.
And so we had a big hit because of the price going down, and it affected our separate governments and it affected our joint government. So.
Well, Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, maybe we could discuss a resolution that the committee would be able to follow up with letters to the appropriate people working with our friends.
Yeah, I agree. And Heather, just make note of that and in our to-do list. I guess the question is do we do a resolution or do we do what we've done historically that I think has had probably the best impact is that this committee, along with the governor's office in different letters, have reached out to and do that. But I think that would probably be my suggestion.
And Mr. Chairman, I think I concur with you. I just kind of hope the committee might vote to empower the chair people to be able to, if we have to send a new letter down the road because there's another name that comes up, I want you to have that power. So thank you.
I guess just as a question that I had, that you brought up something Chairman St. Clair that I think is really important, that I think is a problem. In fact, Scott Ratliff and I was talking about this just a day or so ago, and that's on some of these other opportunities that are really becoming available through some of the grants. I noticed one from the USDA last week that came out that had $100 million that was going to be available to tribes overall in a grant application. And my question is if you guys feel that you're aware of those opportunities as they make themselves available, and if you're able to take advantage with grant writing ability, or if I'm just curious how you guys feel, if you feel like you're in a good position to take advantage of those opportunities when they come by, and if not, I think that we would really like to try and help you become aware and maybe close some of the gaps in helping you take advantage of that, because I think some of those grants would fit into some of these projects that you've identified very, very well, particularly the weatherization and stuff like that from the USDA. If we and then would free up some of this money to do other things. And I just it's the same challenge we have as a state. I was reading that USDA thing, and there's X amount for the states, and then I noticed from the tribes, and so we have the same challenges, and I think we just need to try and make sure that you guys are aware of that stuff. So if you could kind of give us an idea of how, either now or later on a sidebar, if there's something we can help you with there, we'd really like to see you take advantage of as much of that as you can. Any other questions? Chairman St. Clair, Councilman Ute, thank you. Appreciate you being here. Councilman Ute, great job on the presentation, and it's really exciting, Chairman St. Clair, to see the work that your council has gone into identifying the needs and possibly one-time use of these funds to benefit the members of your tribe. Well done. It's exciting.
Chairman?
Councilman Newton.
Yeah, if I can address Senator Case's question about, possible resolutions from the state to help. The conundrum that is the intertribal council. I think we definitely need definitions of what because it's not really even a government. It's kind of like a quasi government. It's in theory was meant to be like a joint powers board, and that's how it was meant to operate, but it's funded like a government, which poses a problem. And if you look at the CARES funding or the ARPA funding, it's really not fair that the ARPA funding comes in for the tribes and it's for the tribal membership and the tribal governments. Yet the tribal governments have to use some of that money for this quasi government that operates. And we have to use it. So I think definitions would really help of what it actually is. And that would also help the tribe. And I think the tribes need to figure out exactly what that is and where it's going, and how the state can help, and actually how the federal government can help with that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman Newton. Okay. Mr. Ratliff, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Case.
can I ask if I understand this correctly? I think I do. So you're talking about people that live on the reservation or live elsewhere that have bloodlines of both tribes, but not enough of either tribe to be enrolled in either tribe. Would that be a fair way to say this? But yet, as a total, if they were some single tribe, they would have enough native blood. And I hope I'm not being brutal about this. Is that what you mean? Mhm. Mhm. Okay, thank you very much.
Senator Case, I think as I listen to this, though, we're looking at programs that the two tribes are required to administer that are, right?
I understand. I certainly understand the government side that
Right.
uh,
Right.
Chairman St. Clair mentioned it. Obviously, there's a lot of employees or there are employees there that aren't getting compensated under the ARPA funds, or there's not ARPA funds available for those programs because they're not under an individual tribe. That's a problem. I was just kind of going off into space, I suppose, about other people though that have a tremendous amount of native blood combined from two tribes, but yet aren't enrolled. But anyway, there's probably nothing. Thank you.
Just trying to get that clear. Thank you. Thank you. So, thank you, Chairman St. Clair and Councilman Ute. Chairman Dresser, good morning to you. Good. Councilman Ridgely, is that right? Did I? And Ryan, you're going to join us, please? Chairman Dresser, the floor is yours. We're interested to, we had a great, it was really interesting to hear how the Shoshone tribe is now addressing the vaccination and the health concerns associated with COVID. We're interested to see how you guys have kind of been out in front of this for a long time, to see how that's moving, and then just the benefits and improvements from the rescue plan. So we'll just turn the time to you, and thank you for being here.
Is it on? Okay. Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Larson, Senator Salazar, Representative Clifford, Senator Case, and also Representative Blackburn. Thank you to, and also members of the committee. My name is Jordan Dresser, and I have the honor of serving as the chairman of the Northern Arapaho Business Council, the governing body of the Northern Arapaho tribe. I would like to thank members of the committee for allowing me to provide comments on behalf of the Northern Arapaho tribe and for all your efforts on these important topics, and also with me as well as Councilman Ridgely and also CFO Ryan Ortiz. Throughout the day, we're going to have, we've reviewed all the various different issues that were submitted to the agenda, and Ryan Ortiz, Travis McNiven, Claire Johnson, and Richard Brannon will be speaking on some of those issues. And also obviously the council members who are present as well. There are several significant updates since the last meeting that I would like to share before we kind of jump into that part. The first one is October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. As you know, domestic violence has become an epidemic throughout Indian country, with violence against Indigenous men and women having reached on very high rates. Ending domestic violence requires the leadership or survivors, support of tribal leaders, the collaborative efforts of the law enforcement, tribal justice systems, public health officials, and community members as well to commit to this, to stop this epidemic. The Northern Arapaho Business Council dedicated itself to protecting vulnerable members in our community in an effort to promote the health, safety, and welfare of our tribal community. We want to let victims and survivors of domestic violence know that they do not stand alone. The Northern Arapaho Business Council passed a resolution declaring October 2021 as the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Drawing attention to this crisis is the first step in stopping the violence. We ask that everyone with the Northern Arapaho tribe speak out against domestic violence. It's time to hear the voices and the stories of survivors and hold offenders accountable for their actions. And as we all may know, domestic violence is a cycle where it's easy to say leave an individual, but there's a lot of factors that go into that. And one thing that we have talked about various times again is that there's so much jurisdictional issues that come on the reservation that a lot of times people get away with crimes, and that's the very unfortunate thing. I'm very happy to see Kara Chambers present here, because domestic violence goes hand in hand with MMIP. And that's something that we have to address on all different levels. So, and also to let people know that they can speak out and share their stories, and also bring awareness to this very important topic. The next one is the opening of the Buffalo Sportsbook. The Northern Arapahoe Business Council is pleased to announce the opening of the Buffalo Sportsbook, which is located inside the Wind River Hotel and Casino. The council hosted a grand opening ceremony on September 9th to celebrate the opening and kick off the start of the NFL regular season. The opening of the sportsbook was a long time coming, and the tribe is excited to be able to offer this. The sportsbook is the only physical location sportsbook in the state of Wyoming, and we're very excited to be hosting the Cowboy football. And we would love to see if you had a chance to look at it. That brings into the next topic, which is the proposed expansion of skill-based amusement games in Wyoming. The Northern Arapaho tribe is concerned about the proposed expansion of skill-based amusement games in the state of Wyoming and are seeking assistance in addressing this issue. The tribe has learned that the Wyoming Parimutuel Commission has interpreted the recently passed 2020 Senate enrolled Act 44 to permit the expansion of skill-based amusement games in the state of Wyoming and allow for the licensure of new vendors and operators beyond these already authorized. The commission's interpretation is contrary to legislators' intent in passing SEA 44 and is deeply troubling to the tribe because of its potential to threaten the tribe's gaming revenues and ability to provide services and support to its members. SEA 44 may have adopted and codified the regulatory framework for regulation of skill-based amusement games contained in 2020 USS Law C-114, but the legislator never intended SEA 44 to be an expansion of these games. The tribe has spoken with members of the legislature regarding SEA 44, and each has confirmed that it is not intended to expand skill-based gaming in Wyoming. The tribe believes that it's extremely important that the commission delay rulemaking on expansion of skill-based amusement games until the legislator has a chance to weigh in during the upcoming legislative session. Expansion of skill-based amusement games in Wyoming would undoubtedly reduce the tribe's gaming revenue, which the tribe relies upon to provide services and support local programs to its members. The tribe cannot afford a reduction in revenues right now because it's still weathering the economic impacts and dramatic increase in demand for tribal services caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Given the negative consequences that expand skill-based amusement games in Wyoming will have on the tribe, we're asking members of the community to assist us in ensuring that this issue can be properly debated and addressed during the upcoming 2022 legislative session. Thank you for your time and consideration on this issue. And that would lead us to the next topic, which we're going to talk about now, which is the ARPA. And navigating this pandemic has been difficult for everybody across the world. It has been very difficult for tribes. I feel as a Northern Arapaho tribe, we have taken certain measures and steps to ensure the safety of our people. As it was addressed, as within the tribal part, which is like was mentioned before, government we take part in, the third government. We did mandate, vaccines for those who in contact with children. And the Northern Arapaho tribe took it a step further, and we did mandate all our employees be vaccinated. And as the largest employer of Fremont County, one of the largest employers of Fremont County, we feel like that was very important to ensure the safety of our employees and also the families who they come in contact with. It's no secret that Wyoming has probably some of the lowest vaccination rates in the country. So every time our tribal members take a step off the reservation, they put themselves in harm's way. So we wanted the extra layer of protection for them with the vaccine. To my knowledge, there has been no side effects reported amongst the individuals who have done it. Yes, individuals did quit on their own accord. And yes, there are some people who were terminated because they did not follow the vaccine. But as a at-will employer, we had that right. And as a sovereign nation, we also had that right. So those are the things that we did to ensure the safety of our people. In terms of the ARPA funds, we have been doing different things. We have done an incentive program for those who are being vaccinated. Individuals are able to qualify for a monetary award, I guess you could call it. We are also, we have a lot of rising positive cases. So therefore, we've been jumpstarting different programs such as being able to provide care packages for those individuals. We have been able to also provide emergency housing for those individuals who do test positive. The Wind River Cares employs our shelter, which at the moment it's for basically trailers. So they can house different families at various times, but at times we are at capacity. And it's just due to this rising cases that are happening everywhere. The cases that we do see are, and the amounts that we do get hospitalized are from individuals who are unvaccinated. So those are the key thing that we're seeing with that trend. Right now, the booster shot is out. So we're encouraging that. And we're also encouraging, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And also the regular flu shot season is kicking in. So we're encouraging that as well. In terms of the ARPA, how we set up a system within the Northern Arapaho tribe is that we are following the guidelines that have been put on a place with it. And we let it up to each tribe's program and their director to submit a proposal, like in a sense, a grant to each of us, to us. In the next coming weeks, we're going to be, we have already started reviewing them. When the next coming weeks, we're going to make finalizations. You know, obviously we go through and take out the ones that don't meet the criteria of it. And we're going to go see which, and then from there, we're going to do it like that. In a way, it holds the programs that are applying for it accountable, as opposed to us just saying, okay, I think we should put it here, we can put it here, we put it there. It's a way for us to hold them accountable and also for us to be accountable as well. Because in a sense, we're going to treat it that such that they're going to have to provide reports and also those as they go along, just so that we can just kind of double verify and everything's going the way it should. So there's that part that's going on with that. We're doing various different things. We're doing a senior home repair, which is the big thing. You know, unfortunately, you know, a lot of these multi-generational households live in a household where they don't have active furnaces. They don't have different things like that. So if we can provide some sort of thing to help them, that's a big thing for us. And we just recently passed a program where we can help seniors 65 and older who qualify and were hit with COVID, that we can provide them a one-time assistance to a vendor, whether it be their gas bill or their light bill or something, whatever it may be, just to offset whatever that may be. But, you know, it comes with the fact that it's a COVID related. So there's various different things that we have going right now. And it's just in a way to help our people, but also ensure the safety of them. And, you know, I'm open up the floor to the other council members and also the CFO, Ryan, if you'd like to say anything.
Councilman Ridgely.
Good afternoon, committee. I would just like to add the reason why we mandated our employees is because of the elderly, the sickly, and the children that's not eligible for the vaccine yet. As you're all aware, we fight diabetes. We have diabetes big problem out there. Heart conditions out there. A lot of our elders and even young men and women are, you know, battling cancer. And, you know, we see all of these requests come through our office. So we felt like it was the right thing to do for the protection of our people. I would like to say too, on the senior assistance program, you know, it's really helping out because we have seniors that were affected by COVID. They don't get to go out and do things. So they don't have water heaters, they don't have furnaces, their roofs are bad. There's mold, there's just a lot of things that, you know, the senior assistance program is helping with. As far as our sports booking, I would encourage you guys to go up and place a bet and see our new facility. It's really nice. We have the right people running it, and it's a very good thing. I would just like to send my appreciation to all you guys who are listening to myself, Chairman and CFO Ryan Ortiz, and thank you.
Ryan. I kicked Ryan's coffee over this morning. Feel bad. Sorry, Ryan.
Not a problem. You have plenty back there. Yeah, thank you, everyone, chairman and committee. Just to expound a little bit on comments already made, the tribe does weekly mandatory tests for COVID with all of the employees set up at various locations throughout, I guess, for the convenience of our employees. And then just a little bit more to expound on the vaccine mandate for the employees. You heard the practical reasons of why to do that, but there's a financial reason as well. There's no services similar to what were available during CARES Act. There's no PPP. We worked very diligently and hard to ensure that our employees were not laid off during the first shutdown. They were sent home, paid, and that was very difficult. And it didn't happen by luck, it happened by hard work. So while those services don't exist anymore, it helps them to ensure that we don't shut down and have to lay them off. There's a financial aspect to having to mandate them too, beyond the logical and obvious reasons. And we have to take all those things into consideration because we don't want to lay off people. That unemployment isn't the same as it was before, and so we're taking every step that we can to ensure the well-being of our employees at every level. Financially, whether they realize that or not either. And it was a minimal impact on us, losing employees and stuff, and unfortunately some, executed their rights to not take the vaccine and move on to another one as we executed our rights to mandate that vaccine. So I applaud the council for taking that difficult stand because it's unpopular, especially in Wyoming. We did do vaccination incentives. So one day we're having a meeting. We have weekly meetings with our medical team, our chief medical officer, our clinical director, various staff and council, myself and legal. We have weekly meetings to update ourselves and brief ourselves on the status of COVID throughout the reservations, particularly with Arapaho tribal members, but inclusive of the reservation. And we're sitting in a meeting one day talking about how we can incentivize people to get vaccinated. This was before the mandate was determined. And we came up with the tried to reach 70%, which is something spoken nationally that 70% is a good number to try to attain to try to protect your community from COVID. So that was the number set forth, and what we decided to do was incentivize people by one, if you have already received the vaccination, we're going to give you a $50 payment for each shot that you received, or $100 if you got Johnson & Johnson. That's motivation for people to go and get it cash in hand. The other one is to try to attain that 70%. Once we do issue a payment of a specified amount out to people that are vaccinated, hopefully, obviously, thanking them for what they did for the protection of the community, and then motivating people who haven't got the shot to do it. It's all in the spirit of being safe, providing security and protection for those who are not able to get vaccinated, because that's a big issue. You still have 11 and below that can't get vaccinated, and we have a lot of young children. It's hypocritical in my opinion anyway, it's hypocritical for somebody to say, well, what does that do to the unborn child? Of course, that's a concern, but what about the children that are all there that you're potentially walking around every day, and spreading that disease to, or that virus to? So we have to take stand, and I applaud the council for taking a very difficult stand on not money, not land, on life and death. Very diligent stand to take. One other thing that we do is we have for lack of a better term, care package program for all of our tribal members who do get quarantined or isolated because of the virus, we have a program that provides food packages and supplies to them so that they can quarantine. Obviously, if you don't have food and supplies, you have to go to the store. Well, that violates the quarantine order. So in an effort to help them quarantine and isolate, we provide food and supplies so that they can, hopefully get healthy quicker. So we're very in touch with the medical issues pertaining to COVID. I think I can hopefully say that we're starting to see a dip in numbers, and we think that we attribute that probably to the vaccinations. You know, the unvaccinated people are kind of, we've hit our plateau, I guess, with those infections, and now we're starting to see that dip because the people who are vaccinated aren't getting sick. So I think we dropped about 20 cases from last week, which is good. So we're on the trend, hopefully, of coming down. So I think everything that's been done by the council and their medical staff and the decisions they've made, we're seeing the benefits of that now, and it's all in the premise of saving lives. So that's kind of all I have to say about the health updates. Applaud everybody's efforts and what they're doing, whatever it is, because people are getting sick and dying, and if we can prevent anybody from getting sick and dying, then I applaud everybody's hard work and efforts on that. So I thank everybody that's in this room for whatever they've done.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, if I have a question about the sports betting issue and sort of the gambling issue, and I'm not sure if this would be appropriate. I'm not sure if you're all done.
I'll do an update on the ARPA.
Okay.
So with the ARPA update, the tribe received their monies. Instituted first off, of course, a tribal member relief payment, which along with the vaccine incentive payments and the monies that we've given out, constitutes about a third of the payment to the tribal members of the money that we received. I mentioned the $50 and $100 for the shots. We're contemplating now whether we're going to pay another $50 for the boosters, and that's been a significant payment out to our tribal members, because as you know, we're motivating people, so to get to 70% constitutes quite a bit of money. So the first was kind of putting the chunks of money into that, and then going from there, reading the interim final rule to find out what's allowable and what's not allowable, then calculating our lost revenues for 2020. That's obviously big. I think everybody's doing that, to see how that can supplement the governmental services as the rule states. So we did that, and came up with that number. We still at this point, and well, at that point when these numbers were calculated and things, hadn't had an official plan of what we're going to do. So, there was a lot of things in motion, different ideas. We have both of our halls are listed as FEMA command centers. And of course, utilized in the past during floods and that thing. So that puts us in a good position to be able to do some renovation of those command centers and make them adequate for use in these types of situations that are going on. Senior repair program and the COVID one-time assistance help for tribal members. And then as a chairman stated, we had the programs. Well, for once, I guess we're sort of the funding agency You know, we always are looking for money, but this time we have some and want to distribute it equitably and appropriately. So we put together something that we're familiar with, which is similar to a 638 contract. And we distributed this contract application to our programs, and it outlined parameters of what everybody could apply for. And so like as the chairman said, we received about 38 different requests, totaling quite a bit of money. We're not able to unfortunately fulfill for everybody, but we'll be looking at those. Well, I'll step back. I looked through them already to see make sure that what was submitted was allowable under interim final rule. Took out what wasn't of every application, and as chairman said, in the coming weeks the council will be deciding what's going to get funded. So after we've kind of come to our structure of what we're going to do, the council went back and put together a plan. So at this point, we really have kind of 4, I guess, pots, I guess, for lack of a better word, of money. We obviously have our tribal member relief payments and incentive initiatives. We have our lost revenues. We've infused money into our command centers to do renovation work there. Our 638 tribal applications and grant opportunities. And then we have put, of course, money aside for unforeseen issues that probably will arise in the next few months. So that's kind of how we're doing with how we're going about strategically with our ARPA money. All of this is in the premise of benefiting, you know, our programs, our tribal communities, but also ensuring, most importantly, that we stay within the guidelines of what this money is used for. So and that's it for me with those 2 updates. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ryan. Committee members, that's any questions that you have? Senator Case?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I understand the concern about the gambling law that was put into the legislature last year, that it had a mistake in it. It totally had a mistake, which has left a loophole, more than a loophole. It's the garage door, the barn's open, the walls are down. So that really gambling is unregulated in Wyoming right now. And basically the good operators are being on their good behavior, but it's going to blow up. This is a serious situation. So, and in fact, our co-chairman was part of, knows more about that than all of us do. So just thinking about that, the need to fix that, and with time being of the essence, and the fact that there is a call for a special session going on right now. So the special session, I'm voting no on the reason to call the special session, because it's about pushing back on the federal vaccine mandates. Okay. So I think that's a bad idea to have a special session for that purpose. But if you've got lemons, and we could make some lemonade by advocating that we need to fix this law. It's an emergency. We could do it in this special session at the same time. And it would close that loophole, stop something bad that could happen in Wyoming. And we could advocate for that as a committee and support our friends and achieve something good. So I just throw that out there.
Representative Cleaver.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank Chairman Dresser, Councilman Ridgely, and the rest of the council. I just got off quarantine. I've been battling the Delta variant. I was in Denver for 2 weeks. And I'm back. And I applaud everything that both tribes are doing with this pandemic and the vaccine and the mask wearing. And again, we are sovereign tribes, so we're here to protect our people. So I want to applaud you guys. I mean, and everything that you're doing with the ARPA funding. I mean, I went through it personally, my family, my daughter, my newborn grandson, my grandson who got it. And it was scary. It's really scary. It's life or death. And I don't want to die now. I've got a lot of things to do still. So I just want to thank you guys for all of that, really, from the bottom of my heart. You had mentioned, our health disparities, and we're talking about the COVID-19 and all that, and Chairman Ridgely, you mentioned, our health disparities we have with heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. We've always had that. Our life expectancy rate is 56 years. Last I knew, it could have changed now because we're losing members. We just now lost a member who's only a few years older than me to COVID, who had passed away. And I worked with her for a lot of years and she died. I don't want to see that anymore. It's heart-wrenching. It's affecting our people. And so with the health disparities too, we still need to battle expanding Medicaid. We need it. It's going to help our Indian Health Service. It's going to help our Wind River Cares. It's going to help all of our people because we, FMAP, as American Indians, we get 100% reimbursement rate because of that. And I think as a committee, Mr. Chairman, we need to do our best to advocate for Medicaid expansion. That's important. People are dying. They were dying before the pandemic and suffering, but this is just taking them out because they have these underlying health conditions. The other thing I want to talk about, and I mean no disrespect, Chairman and Chairman Dresser and Councilman Ridgely and CFO Ryan Ortiz. I want to talk about the gambling issue. I battled that bill and I have a problem with our tribal lobbyist. I don't know whose side he's on. And I was going to come back and meet with you, but we had the pandemic. And I still need to meet with both councils. I was on the phone with you when things went down, Chairman St. Clair and Chairman Dresser. And I have an issue with our tribal lobbyist who's in this room today, undermining the expansion. And I don't like that. And I'm going on record to say that. And things need to change. Thank you.
Thank you. And committee, as much as possible, the committee's job here is to ask questions and not to dictate opinion so much. And so I would just ask you that we always make sure that we try to ask a question so that we can formulate what it is we need to do to help the tribes in this. And along that line, with my question to you is that my understanding from Senator Case is correct. I think that the expansion of the gaming machines was different than the sports betting bill. And we had talked about not allowing the skills games to expand. And I agree with Senator Case on that. My understanding is that because of that mistake, that the Gaming Commission then is allowed to draft rules. That rulemaking process is going to take a while. So my question to you is, can you help support us as we craft a bill that would come back in and rectify that error in the bill? And even if we can take the approach Senator Case has, but I'm assured from the AG that we probably, as I asked that question, that there's probably going to be enough time even through session. So my question to you is that, or are we on the same page that and could we ask for your support as we try to craft a bill? And it'll probably be through Chairman Ellis's committee to rectify that language to then again put that prohibition of expansion.
Chairman, yes, we want to make sure that the tribes are at the seat of the table at all times. And the key thing about the troubling things about what happened in the last year is just the fact that tribes were left out of various different key conversations in both tribes, when in the end, the Northern Arapaho tribe and the Eastern Shoshone tribe have the gaming experience here in Wyoming. And so of course we would do that.
Thank you. So coming back, can I ask, do you know, at our last meeting, I think there was around 1,200 people that you had vaccinated. Do you know what that number is today? And you've told us that the side effects are still at 0, but do you have a number?
We are close to 3,000 vaccinations.
3,000. And then to the discussion on being 70% vaccinated at 3,000, where does that put you? Where do you think you're at in obtaining that 70%?
We hit the 70%. So we're at the 70%.
Way
Yes.
to go.
Yes, thank you.
Good. Good. Then,
Well done.
well done. Chairman Dresser, as you talked about some of the programs that you were looking at, I had a question because I know that you guys have put a lot of emphasis on your broadband expansion through Wind River Internet. How is that proceeding? I think that there was some CARES money that they was able to get, and I don't know, but how is that expansion effort going to, particularly as we quarantine people and people are closer, are we making headway there?
It's going. I haven't gotten a full update. Would you happen to know, Ryan?
Mr. Chairman, they've been fairly successful with acquiring money for the expansion. They did receive CARES Act money. As with a lot of operations during CARES Act, the imposed timelines kind of put a damper on meeting the full success that they wanted to achieve when they attained the CARES Act money from the state. What's unfortunate is the state took the money back, even though there was an extension, because that was what happened, or that was the determination by legislature what to do with that monies at the time. So
can I ask a question on that? Because my understanding was if they weren't able, if recipients of that broadband expansion money, any of those CARES Act programs did meet the timeline at the end of the year, but had been committed, that leftover money, once they expanded that deadline, that they was going to then go back and allow them to carry on. Did that impact you guys? Were you able to continue on with those funds that you would have originally had to send back?
it's my understanding, Mr. Chairman, that they had to give the money back and weren't able to reacquire it to finish.
I need to follow up on that, okay? And then I'd like to ask also, Ryan, you brought up supplies, and particularly on PPE. Has there been a challenge this year in getting supplies that there was last year? Or has that supply chain kind of been able to provide you with what's needed?
So the tribe itself has been able to acquire a pretty steady stream of disinfectant service, or disinfectant cleaning supplies and masks. And I believe that the Wind River Family Community Healthcare reported that pre-Delta variant, they were working pretty diligently to acquire the gowns and things that they were potentially going to need. And I don't think that that's been an issue, but I think, again, it's probably not an issue, or we're not aware of it being an issue if it is statewide or nationally, because clinic was proactive in pursuing that before the Delta variant really spiked.
Then also, Ryan, if I may, you and Chairman Dresser both talked about these care packages, which I thought was a great approach to that. My question is how long is it repeated? Do they identify? Can you kind of tell us how that works? Is once a home is identified, then do they just kind of keep track of that and make sure that they've got the supplies are provided to them until they're kind of out of that quarantine status? Can you help me understand that a little bit?
It goes, we work closely with Wind River Cares because the quarantine orders are very vital for us. And that's what we go based off of. And then we're able to provide that service to them. We're able to provide it, once again, going back to the multi-generational households, we can provide that service again to, them down the road if they, unfortunately, they catch it again. But yeah.
Thank you. And then Ryan, you brought up a good point also on the tribe being able to look back, I believe, to January 2020 on revenue and capture that. And remind me that you also get to have an inflation of 4%. Is that right? So that you actually get that amount plus an additional 4% that you're able to suck that ARP money back into what I'll call your general fund. It's what we call our general fund. And then you can use that as you would to operate the normal government affairs of the tribe, correct?
Mr. Chairman, we took the exact numbers that we lost. We didn't do an inflation. The exact number that we lost exceeded what we were able to use anyway for lost revenues with all the other services and things that we did. So we took the exact numbers, set that aside, and what we're doing with respect to government services is took any government service that was pre-pandemic and determined that that was a service that's eligible for funding. We don't want to have the discussion that, well, this happened post-pandemic or during the pandemic, does that would qualify or not? So we took any services that we were providing post-pandemic and said, those are eligible for this. We fund them and code them accordingly. Anything that's newer in respect to, with respect to operations, not with respect to obviously COVID mediation or mitigation, then we use that with unrestricted monies.
Thank you. I just was hoping if there was still a need that you were taking advantage of that. So, and I think you can over the next couple of years if need be. Isn't that correct?
That yes, you are able to reassess those, the next couple of years as well. But we've set budgets with the money, so we pretty much decided what we're going to spend on lost revenues. And
well done. Any other questions, committee members? Great updates, both Councilman or Chairman Dresser and Chairman St. Clair. Very helpful, and would commend you for the efforts that you and your tribe are doing. I think we're at that point, Madam Chairman. Welcome back. Hope things went well. We're not too bad. I think we'll go ahead and take a break and come back about a quarter after. And start in our SIU and is Lee here, Tendor here? Okay, we'll get started on those updates. Thank you. Okay, committee, we're back on. We're at our item number 4. I think we've got our tribal liaison, and I think Emily Solai, from the governor's office, is, if she's in the waiting room, if you could admit her, but Sai, if you and Lee would come and join us, I'd appreciate that. And I don't have a preference on who would like to go first there. You guys can flip. Sai, okay, you raise your hand. We'll let you start in if you would, please. And Lee, if you want to use that other mic and distance yourself, that'll be great.
All right.
Sai.
Well, good morning, members of the committee, and I thank you for this opportunity to again give a report. I would like to commend the tribal councils as well as the committee to see this level of engagement, and those comprehensive reports that we received these last few meetings has been really encouraging in terms of relations. As you all know, I've been here for a while now and I've been in front of this committee several times, and to see this level of engagement as of late is really a sign of the times, and it's really encouraging. Not to have any negative connotations toward previous or prior leadership, but this level of engagement, whether it's good or bad, we agree or disagree, this level of engagement is really encouraging. As far as the report goes, we are working and have been working on a communication plan between myself and the leadership of the Arapaho tribe. And I will be having weekly calls with the co-chair, Lee Spoonhunter, to go over issues, any concerns that were raised. We have initiated this. They don't always translate to direct government to government relationships in terms of the governor's office or the legislative body. Sometimes it's just a question of resources. Is this resource available, or is this service available? And how the state as a whole can support the tribe individually across different agencies. And I think that's just good rapport. That's just good relations, and also may speak to the needs of the tribe, and those supportive services being available to the tribe obviously is needed on a case-by-case basis. It always amazes me. The staff turnover, for one, is one that we share in common in terms of social services, and that's definitely an initiative that we're looking at here now. So how can we support one another in terms of reducing our staff turnover for our DFS programs? It's just something the two agencies or the two departments can work together on to reduce that same dilemma. So with that, I turn it over to my counterpart here, Mr. Tendor.
Thank you, Sai. Good morning, Madam Chair, Co-Chair, Committee. So for my updates, I have to piggyback off from what Sai was saying, is we also have a line of communication from the Shoshone Business Council. That is a weekly call, just an information update, share information, get things, moving at a fast pace, better communication. And secondly, it would be the response for Representative Clifford, and that was through the Sovereign Bodies Institute. That's for the letter of data release to the tribes, and that was just for the sovereign bodies would only allow information to be released to tribal, indigenous, and entities. So that's the reason for that. And I followed up with that about a week ago, and that was being looked at. So hopefully that'll go through. That was pretty much the update for that. I stand for any questions in the committee. If none.
Committee, any questions? Emily, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for having me today, virtually, albeit, but thank you for having me. My name is Emily Solai. I'm special counsel to Governor Gordon. I'll start off with not necessarily an update, but since each of the liaisons did mention the weekly meetings that they're now facilitating with the business councils, I'll remind the committee that the governor is still holding his quarterly meetings as well with each of the councils to make that leader to leader connection that is so important to the state's relationship with each of the tribes. And his next quarterly meeting is next week. So we're looking forward to that and having direct discussions between the chairs of each of the Northern Arapaho and Eastern Shoshone tribes, as well as the governor, and some of the concerns that we might have. As far as updates go, I do have a couple. In the last meeting, I gave the committee the update that the Eastern Shoshone DFS office had executed its 4E contract with the state. As a reminder, 4E is the federal reimbursement program for child welfare services for both states and tribes, although the eligibility criteria for that federal 4E program are very onerous. And so the state is currently working with each of the tribal DFS offices so that they're eligible for 4E reimbursement funding, which grows the pot of funds overall on the Wind River Reservation for child welfare services. So that would be a win for the state, a win for each of the tribal DFS offices as well. And it's something that the state DFS office and each of the tribal DFS offices has been working very hard toward. The update I have this time is that Northern Arapaho has now also executed its 4E incentive fund contract with the state of Wyoming, which means that each tribal DFS office is now eligible for a state fund to help finance the many tasks, the many obligations that those offices will have to take up in order to become 4E eligible through that federal program. I'll also update the committee that Eastern Shoshone has received its first payment from that state fund, which means it's made very fast progress. It just executed the contract not too long ago. And that DFS office has been working daily with the state DFS group to understand the 4E requirements and start implementing them. So that's great news. We're all feeling very optimistic about progress for DFS. The other update that I have for the committee is regarding Herrera and the related federal Repsis litigation, which was what I was asked by the committee to provide an update on in the last meeting. The update that I have for this meeting is that the Crow tribe has filed its appellant brief with the 10th Circuit in the Repsis case, which means that now the state is working on its appellee brief. So some movement in the federal litigation related to Herrera. Still no update on the state litigation. So we still don't have a court order, which is what the parties are waiting on right now. And I think that's it for me, but I will stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions for Ms. Solai? So Emily, if we could go back, I was interested. I didn't know, the last I was aware is the Northern Arapaho DFS were considering being on their own for the 4E reimbursement and that's a change, right? That they are going to go through the pass-through with the state?
Chairman, no, that has not changed. So it remains the case that Eastern Shoshone DFS office has made the decision to take 4E funding as a pass-through of the state, while Northern Arapaho DFS office will be receiving that funding directly from the feds. Either way, and that decision is totally at the discretion of each tribe, of course. Either way, the governor's 4E fund with state funds is available to each tribe. But that decision is one of the reasons that this contract for that state funding has taken so long to work on. It's taken about a year because for each tribe, that decision about how to take the funds had to be made. Depending on that decision, the process to obtain 4E eligibility is different. And so then each tribal DFS office had to work out their plan to meet the benchmarks required by the federal government, as well as the budget with the state funds to match those benchmarks. So it took a lot of planning even just to get to this step, which is why it is so exciting that now each tribe is eligible for the state fund. But that is still the case, unless something has changed that I'm not aware of, that Northern Arapaho continues to work toward direct 4E funding rather than pass-through funding.
Thank you. I think I just misunderstood your explanation that they were going to go through with the state pass-through, which was a change. So thanks for that clarification that they're still looking for reimbursement directly. Committee, any other questions for Emily before we leave the executive branch report? Thanks, Emily. Sai, Lee, thank you. Appreciate the good work you're doing. We're to the point there on solid waste and cleanup with the tribe state environmental protection agency. We have any the tribal solid waste folks that would like to give us an update on or their thoughts on the efforts to address solid waste cleanup? Ryan? Are you? And while we're waiting, I think we provided to the members of the committee a letter that was sent by the interagency council to the governor in support of an effort to clean up the historic illegal sites. And we'll give you a little bit of update. The question, Heather, to you is, do we have anybody in the waiting room from the EPA?
Mr. Chairman, they are admitted and they're here. We have Janice Pearson and Allison Ruse.
Okay, thank you. Ryan, you're masked up, ready to go? Okay. Councilman Ute, Chairman St. Clair. Sounds like that we maybe have got the gap funding in place. That's what I'm hoping you're going to report.
Yes, this is Chairman St. Clair. We were notified on October 4th of a special award for General Assistance Program grant, and that was from the EPA. The gap funding, the purpose is just to reestablish our organization, which is the Environmental Quality Commission. And so that's the work plan that is being, that we're going to follow, is to appoint 2 representatives to sit on a committee that will reestablish that commission. Eligible selections could be from elected tribal leadership, tribal staff, community members, industry experts. We haven't really gone forward with that selections yet, contemplating which is the best approach, whether to look at individuals who would eventually be appointed to the commission, or to temporarily put some people in there and then change. It may be better to have continuity. So that's kind of what the Shoshone tribe is looking at, is to maybe have a member of the elected body to have at least one position on there, and then someone else that maybe has experience in the past as being on that commission. The funding then is not a lot of money. I think it's 150,000. And so that's where we're at on that. So we're just getting our environmental commission organized and put into place, and that'll cover all of the environmental issues on the reservation. And there's a great need for that, to do monitoring of water, waste in the oil fields, all the other environmental issues that we've been faced with over the years. So that's pretty much the status of that gap funding. Any addition?
Committee member, chairman. Yeah, I'm aware also of the award, and I know that the groups are working within the, strategically to put this back together so that it's effective and works to benefit the shared interests that the tribes have, and it's difficult to always navigate through. So I think it was a lot of hard work through a lot of people, and still got a ways to go to put the structure together and in place, but at least now we have the funding to do so and get it moving in a good direction again. Things that will benefit both tribes with regard to resources and environmental issues will be able to be worked on and looked at more in depth again.
Questions, committee? Chairman St. Clair, Ryan, do you guys have kind of a tentative date that you would like to see the commission organized? Are you thinking that's something to take place by the end of the year, or would you anticipate that it might take longer?
I was just looking to see if we, on our project plan, we did have timelines in there. We don't have timelines in there, but we do have like a proposed budget. We have structure of the program, which way the funds will be spent. There'll be some for equipment, supplies, fringe benefits for personnel. And just to back up a little bit, if any of the elected leaders sit on that committee, they won't be compensated, but people that aren't on the elected councils, there is compensation in there for them. The timeline that I'm looking at, or hopefully is just as soon as we can get going on this, to try to get it in place. This committee has been dysfunctional for the past 5 or 6 years, and we have things just going forward. We've taken control of Circle Ridge oil field. We have issues out there, monitoring to be done. So we just need to move forward on this as quickly as we can.
Mr. Chairman, if I could make a request from you, if you would mind keeping us in the loop on that, and I make that request because as we continue to have discussions between this committee, the governor's office, and the EPA, and trying to look at cleaning up these historic illegal dumps, it would be nice if perhaps at the two tribes direction that we could then start including representation from that environmental commission to help us with some of those discussions as we meet on that.
Thank you. My interpretation is that automatically they would be involved.
Yeah.
Whenever we get them on board. But even before that happens, we still need to move forward on that issue.
Agreed. I would just if when we have names, we'll just start including them as we do that, and we will continue to move forward and we'll report on that. But just was making that request, and then we'll include them as soon as we know who they are.
And if you want to go forward at this time with that issue, I can. I'm talking about the cleanup.
Yeah, please.
First of all, we're still operating the transfer station operating agreement. That's still in effect. We found out that over the years that funding had been sufficient, but presently it isn't because of the tipping fees keep increasing. And so that's kind of becoming a problem with that agreement. So it runs short toward the end of the funding period just because of those high fees that are being imposed upon us. On the solid waste cleanup initiative that is proposed by Representative Larson, the Shoshone tribe does agree with that. And hopefully, like I testified earlier about this morning, that out of the CARES funding, the Shoshone tribe has infused about $300,000 into our solid waste program. We purchased, last year, we purchased a big semi truck with a side dump. We purchased a F-350 Ford flatbed that has a welder, compressor, and snowplow. That we have a small dump, a dump trailer that we purchased, and then we purchased like 6 canisters, 30 cubic yards, two of them 25 cubic yards, and 2 of them 15 cubic yards. And that's just we infused into that program to keep this mainly on the transfer of the waste. But as to the cleanup issue, we're in support of that. We haven't obligated all of our ARPA funds yet because it's still early. We hope, that it would fall within that and would be willing to contribute an equal amount with the Northern Arapaho tribe into that initiative to clean up all of the dumps on the reservation. The one that located at Arapaho, Fort Washakie, Crowheart, and Eastie. So we're on board for that as long as, and in consideration that the state contributes a reasonable amount that's commensurate with our contributions. And also that EPA, IHS cooperates with that. As to the, we're making some proposed amendments, changes to the law and order code regarding solid waste. We've pretty much drafted a whole new section on it, outlawing illegal dumping and expanding the definition of littering. And so there's a procedure to deal with that. That'd be a section on those 2 issues, illegal dumping and littering, but also we're looking at improper disposal of hazardous waste, open burning, waste accumulation, regular waste, construction waste, animal carcasses, damage to solid waste equipment. And then the enforcement procedure, we're looking at like a administrative or civil process to within the commission. However, we do also have a statute in the law and order code outside of this that prohibits littering. What I would propose is to increase the penalties for that and put in the definition, add the definition of these other acts that I just went through. Improper disposable hazardous waste. We could put that within that littering and then have a schedule of penalties commensurate with the act. Simple littering, throwing something out the window, that doesn't have to be as serious as dumping hazardous waste on the reservation. So we're going to look at having a schedule of penalties. We realize that under Oliphant that we don't have criminal jurisdiction over non-Indians, but we can put in severe civil penalties. We, like any other government, in terms of traffic and other civil procedures that we do exercise, sometimes there's a problem with collecting your fines, but like other governments, we do have the authority to garnish wages, attach bank accounts, In the state of Wyoming, all we need to do is have our order recognized under full faith and credit. And then outside of the state, comply with those procedures that other states have for enforcing judgments. So those are the things we're looking at to try to solve this problem, and we want to solve it ourselves so that we do the enforcement ourselves completely on the reservation.
Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, I just had a question about when you go down that path, and I just was curious if Wyoming courts are cooperative when you present those orders or, requests for garnishing wages and things like that. Are you seeing any problems with cooperation?
We've seen some problems. We've seen normally with Fremont County. But the procedures is kind of burdensome, but we're still able to get through it. And this came up as soon as the act was passed. So at first there was some, I suppose, opposition to doing that, but I think the procedure has been worked out to where if we follow it, we can get our orders recognized.
Chairman, for me.
Yeah.
So Chairman Ellis, that was definitely a problem at the beginning, but what we found was, and this is basically why we decided to draft all new tribal law and order code for this particular section, was if we can mirror what Fremont County has in place already, they are more likely to go along with whatever at least civil or any other kind of fines that we can have, because we're also looking at finding out which authorities can hand down these civil penalties to these offenders. If it mirrors what the Fremont County has already in place, then they typically shouldn't have a problem with it. If it's too out of balance of what they have, then there will be, but that's what we're kind of modeling it after.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just a follow-up. That's an issue that I'm really interested in. So in the future, if you happen to see cases or issues where that cooperation is lacking, I'd just be curious to know.
Ryan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate, all the hard work that councils have been doing on rewriting the codes and trying to make things more beneficial, to combat this issue. So I think they're definitely in the, headed down the right direction in this, making stiffer penalties and all of that. Myself, I guess I'm the spokesman for trash for the Arapaho tribe. I've been doing it for quite a while. So even though I'm removed from this piece of it, we have the tribes entity that collects solid waste on the reservation, and that's kind of been a little bit of the I don't want to say issue, but it's always something that's a different discussion than the policy discussion, right? Because we operate a business. So how can we, or quasi business anyway, it's not for profit or nothing, but it's a reduced services, and try to sustain the program. That's the efforts, and try to capture grant funding to do that. So a lot of times we have conversations with EPA, and them are more interested in the work that's being done over here. And we're trying to run the business and be part of the change that needs to take place. So just a little update on the business side. We finally have been in a place to open up 17 Mile. We talked about that for quite a while. There's cans out there. They're waiting for one last piece of the puzzle, so to speak, whether they're going to charge or not, and that'll be up to the council to decide. And then it should be open. You drive up 17 Mile now, the transfer station and the roads have been cleaned up, free of debris. There used to be a big berm by the transportation building that's been taken down, and then it should be operating in operation here soon. Again, as Chairman St. Clair said, that's not being paid for under any contract or any dollars. Tribe's doing that at a loss, 100% loss, and using the profits or the monies, excess monies that they make from the business to operate that, to supply the, all the equipment and every manpower and everything that it takes to go there. And if that runs into deficit, then the business council has allowed for that to be subsidized with tribal funds. We just have no other option but to do that. And it's unfortunate because it's been taught numerous times that transfer station is necessity. It's in a large community. Everybody on this side of the table agrees that that's the case. I think a lot of the committee members agree that that's the case. And so we put these efforts in place. You have USDA, you have IHS, EPA, both tribes come to the table and kind of at the push here of the committee. And there's always one piece of the puzzle that's never there, never making any concessions, never doing anything to help operational costs on our end. Forcing and dictating terms of a contract where you hear, Chairman St. Clair say it runs short every year. They're never at the table. I know that the Northern Arapaho tribe is in support of putting money into cleaning up illegal dumping. We have to, we have all kinds of issues that could stem from this. They wrote a letter to the governor, supporting this effort and all of this. So you can see we're invested. The Shoshone tribe is invested. The committee's invested, EPA and all these other people are invested, but the county who dictates, who gets the money, who dictates policy in Fremont County, they're never invested in this. They sit there, and in my opinion, smugly and draft contracts that are detrimental to operations, because they do it specifically to regain most of the money that they give to the tribes to operate these. And that's not fair. We want to put in money, they want to put in money, the state wants to put in money, but we're still going to have the same operational confines because they never come to the table. They never make any concessions. They say, oh, we help. We give you guys some money to operate. We give us money to operate in the deficit all the time, and put unreasonable confines in these contracts that make it impossible for us to operate efficiently. So I say, this is not the first time that we've all put in money to clean these up, these illegal dump sites up. It's happened before. We've put in monies before to do this, and here we are back into the same stance, doing the same thing, the same cleanup in a lot of instances in the very same locations as the first time we did this. And we had a huge initiative way back in the 90s before I started working to clean these sites up. So what's the policy that's going to change? We're going to put all this money into it, and are we going to be needing to do this again in 10 or 15 years? Because that's the case now. Putting more money into doing what we've already done. When's the policy going to change? When is the county going to come to the table? We want to put all this together, and collaborate with ARPA funds that is for the benefit of our people, for the benefit of our programs, our communities. But we need to make sure that this is sustainable. So when we come to the table with putting in real dollars that could, if this wasn't the case, benefit somewhere else in a very needed time, we have to put money to doing something that we've already done once. So we really need to emphasize policy. I implore you guys to look at that, take that into consideration, and somehow, while I know you cannot dictate terms to the county and to their operations, certainly can have conversations with them and at least have them be at the table, to even express their disagreement with whatever's being discussed. But at least make them part of the discussion, make them part of the solution, to whatever extent that can be, or look at it in a whole different context and fund us separately. So I think that, that's where we're at. we're working hard to try to combat this. You know, we have to charge for the services that we do, but it's at as cheap a rate as we can to help people afford it. Of course, there's lots of times that we go and write off money that's owed to us, you know, because people can't afford it. But we do the best that we can to make that sustainable and progress it. And I do applaud all the work that people do on the policy issues on our ends. And think that that's moving in the right direction, hold people accountable that come out and illegally dump. And do implore you guys though to somehow push or ask at a minimum to get the county to the table to into these discussions. EPA holds these, I want to say, either at least monthly meetings. Everybody's at the table except the county. Governor's office is at the table, Shoshone's, Arapaho's, EPA, IHS, but we never have the input or any comment or anything from the county people who, like I said, dictate policy and have the purse strings of the state to operate solid waste here. Thank you all.
Questions, committee? So Chairman St. Clair, could you just walk me through the time frame or the mechanics of getting the amendments to the tribal law and order code into place? How does all of that work?
From a committee that's been drafting our proposed law and order code. We do have a grant from the BIA to do an update, not only of this section, but all sections of the law and order code. That's been kind of at a standstill for, geez, as long as I've been on, but the grant is still there. We got another extension for a couple of years. We need to get the entity that responded to the RFP on board to get this going. Once that gets going, it looks like under their proposal, they will hold community meetings, get input from entities that are affected by the changes that are being proposed. So it'll take a while before this becomes final. Once there's a final draft of all the amendments or changes to the law and order code, that'll be presented to each tribal government for approval. The process and procedure that's been developed is that the Eastern Shoshone Tribe has to have that approved by the Shoshone General Council, so it'll be presented there. The Northern Arapaho Tribe Business Council has authority to do legislation, so they could do their approval. And then after that, it goes back before the Intertribal Council for final approval.
Thank you. That's what I didn't have my head around. That's very helpful. Thank you. I would like to throw out a seed. I think maybe Chairman St. Clair, you and I talked a little bit about this and ask if you've given consideration. As the state has evolved over the decades, and we created the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund to preserve those revenues for the next generations to benefit from those finite resources. Then we created the Wildlife Trust Fund. We put money in there, and then we take those revenues and operate conservation projects in the end. I wondered if you guys have considered or had any discussion with some of this one-time money that may be coming forward in the infrastructure bill or some of these others, about the possibility of taking some of that and creating a corpus that you could invest, make it inviolate and invest, and then take the revenue generated off of that for the operations, because it always comes down to money. How do we operate the day-to-day gathering of solid waste? and then use those revenues generated off from that to operate that. And I just was curious if you had, and if you haven't, maybe you might can maybe kind of consider that a little bit and see if there's not an ability to, because it seems to work well.
Representative Larson, we have thought about that, kicked the ideas around. On the CARES and ARPA funding, it looks like there's a deadline to expend all those funds, so that wouldn't work in that situation. We're still in the process of organizing a structure to use our income from Circle Ridge. We're working on a guiding document. That would be probably the most logical place to deal with something like that, not only for this issue, but for other issues outside of that we need to have, say, build a trust fund up for, hopefully it'd be large enough to where we could then just use the interest off that. But I think for now, we haven't got to that point, but we've certainly been thinking about it seriously.
Thank you. You have, Ryan, please.
Thank you. I think, I'm removed from those conversations, but I think just wanted to point out that this situation is indicative of what Chairman St. Clair said earlier. We each have a government, and then we have a third government, in essence, that gets no funding. So again, both tribes have to figure out how to fund that interest when we have our own interests as well, so it's always, have you thought about putting some money into something that's a joint interest? Well, absolutely. How do you do that when you have 15 other individual interests that you got to take care of as well? So we got to figure out how to, as was discussed earlier, fund those joint interests, with federal monies and make it as such so that it's not taking away from each tribe's single interests as well. Fine line to always walk.
Do either one of you, as you've looked at this solid waste matter, have an idea of what you think it would take annually for operation cost to gather and dispose solid waste? And if not, maybe could you maybe look at that and give us an idea as we try to work with some of these projects? At least we've kind of got a number floating in our head. I don't think it has to be, down to the penny, but just an approximate idea would be helpful.
This is where I think that the county needs to be involved, because herein lies the issue as I see it. They give around $250,000. My assessment, that's the amount of money that you need to operate. Okay, and let me give you an example of what I tried to talk to them about. This is operational money that they get, okay? And they have an operational budget, okay? So they go out and they man these other transfer stations. That's an operational cost. Then they come back across the scale and they weigh their garbage. So they know, how much trash they're collecting from community X, and then how that correlates to the revenue that they collect when they're operating it. What they don't do is charge that truck driver a fee to dump the trash afterwards. They charge us a fee to dump the trash afterwards. So in essence, they give you $250,000, but if you have 50% of that going back in fees, your real operational cost is $125,000. Therein lies the issue that I've tried to discuss with them that they dismiss. Well, we charge ourselves some. Well, where? Because if you don't actually charge yourself, you may absorb it in other areas, but we need to have policy discussions so that we can come up with what true costs of that are. The true cost of this operation is not $250,000. True costs of them are exceed that. you know, and they know that. That's why they demand part of the money back, because there's fees involved and stuff. So that's just something that I wanted to say with regard to being able to, you know, accurately assess the cost of that. That's a piece of discussion that, you know, isn't at the table right.
Thank you. So I think what we'll do, Heather, is we've got Janice Pearson and Allison Rue with the EPA, and I don't know if we've got Emily still on with the governor's office, but Allison, if you're on, maybe you could speak a little bit to the conversations that have been taking place between the EPA, the state of Wyoming, and on the matter of trying to formulate a plan, if you will, of cleaning up these historic illegal dumps, and to kind of give the committee an idea of where we're at in this whole process and what we think we've accomplished to this point.
Sure. Just so you know, like there's kind of parallel things happening. There's the cleanup effort is Senator Larson had mentioned that the state has been talking with us and saying, hey, you know, we really want to come to the table and help with trying to clean up with the open dumps. And I know that Lloyd Larson, you've been in contact with both Northern Arapaho and Eastern Shoshone. I think now there's just sort of letters saying they too, and based on what I heard today, would like to chip in towards this effort for cleaning it up. So IHS has been out and done a bunch of looking around with both tribes at where these dumps are, how big are they still active? You know, we're in this process of trying to determine, you know, as funding becomes available, hopefully through ARPA or CARES Act or whatever means, that we'll somehow have a picture put together of where we want to start. I think we've got like 20 dumps identified. It's really going to come down to the majority of the money right now is going to be coming from either state or the tribe funds, however you guys piece that together. But IHS, we've been talking about how can we maybe get them to maybe chip in on some of this. For example, the transfer stations, you know, those need to be cleaned up. So when they go in to do construction improvements, they can use some of the money to help with cleanup efforts there. I'm looking into EJ possibilities. There might be other EJ grants that are coming up. They're like those one-time funds. But, you know, we're still just slowly moving down the road, but there's been lots of conversations. And I know we've had what I'm calling the larger group, which included Fremont County, as Ryan had noted, and all the parties I can think of that would care, right? Including USDA, because they might have some funds that could maybe help out. All of the funds from the federal side will take longer. I don't know if that's really helping with this discussion, Lloyd, but basically we're all trying to just keep in communication. And as we move forward with what funds can be used, getting applications in and making sure that we're noting which dumps need to be prioritized first, potentially. The hope is we get to all of them. And then the parallel piece, which is the part that is kind of more up my alley and where I feel like I'm able to add the most value, has really been these bi-weekly calls I've had with the Wind River Intertribal Committee, Solid Waste Commission that's included representatives from both tribes, mostly working on the enforcement side. We're going to get into getting an integrated waste management plan in place so that we can start working on prevention and enforcement as we go forward, because obviously we want these dumps to come back. So both need to be happening. Fremont County hasn't been included in that yet. Ryan had mentioned that, just simply because we're just not ready for them to come to the table yet. But I love the idea that we're going to parallel the codes to match what Fremont County's regulations say. I think that's a good idea. And actually, I think it is about time for us to maybe pull them in. I haven't heard that they don't want to be there. I just hadn't invited them yet because I wasn't sure if they were wanted there at the table yet. So I don't know if that was helpful, Lloyd, or.
Well, I think so. And I'll get a little more specific on the effort to use ARP funds from the state in the respective tribes, and hopefully some from one of the federal agencies to clean up the historic sites. The question has always been, okay, it's a good idea, but then how do we make it work? how do we implement the plan? And one of the questions was, is where do you park the money? We had some questions on that because you're looking at several jurisdictions. You've got each tribe as a jurisdiction, you've got the state as a jurisdiction, you've got the EPA as a jurisdiction, and you have a solid waste district as a jurisdiction. And so how do you administer that? And in visiting with State Land and Investments Director Scoggins says that they can put the money there. They do it with the Clean Water Act, the state revolving funds that impact all of these same jurisdictions and could pay the bill. So that was one box marked. Then who administers the cleanup process? And the concern there was, is whoever that is, will they have the authority so that the state doesn't come back and growl at them, or the tribes or the EPA, that they have the authority through an MOU per se to administer the program and say that it's put out the bids, and then to verify that the work's been done and completed and validate invoices for payment. And so we've looked at perhaps having the DEQ do that. That seems to be a very difficult task. We've looked at the EPA and doing that. That seems to be a bureaucratic black hole that you suggested we avoid. And it kind of come back then to the solid waste district. Coming back to your point, Ryan, is they have some expertise there and have met with them, and that may be a possibility, and bring that into the discussion. So Allison, I guess my question is this is evolving, this is kind of this is fair in where we're at in these discussions. Is that correct?
Yes, and yeah, you covered a lot there, Lloyd. Exactly the things I totally skipped over there, which is, yeah, we want to work out agreements. EPA wants to support this effort, and in any way we can, technically, and through either agreements or helping to organize and find other sources of funding that the tribes can apply for. I mean, that's where we see our role, and IHS is already underway with an SDS listing to try and get funding that wouldn't be able to happen for another year and a half because of the way their funding cycle is, but it's in the works. So no matter where the money ends up eventually coming from, we definitely are going to evolve with it, and we're all wanting to work together on this. And actually, I've even seen Fremont County. I mean, they came to the initial meeting we had with everybody, which includes the governors and several federal agencies, those tribes, where I'm hoping to host another one of those here at the end of November, early December. I mean, at the very least, Fremont County will be at that. I feel like we're making progress. Like you said, Lloyd, you've checked off some boxes. We know we can create some agreements. We know we can, really work through some of this stuff.
So we have some draft agreements the EPA has used in other places, and then you've had the assignment to check back through the EPA to get a sense on whether ARPA dollars are appropriate for this type of use, and we feel that we're comfortable in that and are waiting for some more clarification. So there's been a fair amount of work taking place, and we probably would suspect, I would suspect we would start seeing some congealing of that whole plan as we come forth in the next few months. Is that fair?
That sounds very fair. Yes.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question. I think you mentioned EJ funds, and I'm guessing you're talking about environmental justice. I know there's a lot in those programs and what's available, but do you have a sense of what kind of programs those are targeted toward the EJ funds? Because in my mind, I can't think of a more appropriate way of spending if you're talking about environmental justice, and to just put a finer point on it with clean air and clean water. If, under delegated authority, if states aren't doing the job, the feds sweep in and start taking over those programs. We don't have that same corollary when it comes to solid waste. And tribes just don't have the revenue generation capability because of the goofy tax structure we have in Indian country. And so they're truly disadvantaged at so many ways of managing these programs. And so to me, this seems like a no-brainer, but if you could just kind of drill down a little bit of what kind of environmental justice projects have been supported, and do you think that this fits in that?
Well, I'm learning as I go, Senator Ellis. So I wish I could say that I've drilled down enough yet. I'm just now making contact with some headquarters folks because I don't know enough about it. It just came to my attention that I thought, oh my gosh, there's a big emphasis right now with the new administration in EPA for environmental justice, EJ, and that there should be some funding that's going to be created there. I don't know what that funding looks like or what the requirements will entail, but I think it's definitely worth a deep look on my part from my vantage point, exactly what you're saying, that if there's any way we can leverage some of that to help with the solid waste concerns and issues that the tribes are dealing with, we need to do that. And they're not the only tribes. So this is definitely, it's in my job to be looking into this. And I'm just now scratching the surface. I haven't gotten there yet, but as soon as I know more, I'll be in touch with not only the tribes, but also just to let Lloyd know, because he's been really instrumental in trying to pull everything together so we can get this cleanup happening in an efficient, effective manner. So, and the governor's office too cares because they want to be able to put funds towards this as well. So, and there may be other stuff out there too. I'm still looking. It's a lot. I wish there was one-stop shop. You could just like, hey, we just go here and now I can know everything. And I mean, we do have a grant system, but reading through those can be really difficult. So I really just need to start with a couple of offices, get some leads, if you will, on what the best funding options might be and where to apply. Hopefully, and some of these might be one-time funds. And so another reason why it would be perfect for something like this, we just have a one-time quick cleanup. It won't help you with sustainable program stuff, but it'll help you clean stuff up. And as I know more, I'll let you know.
We have a question from Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to hear from the tribal representatives based on the conversation up to this point after they got done testifying. Do you guys agree with the assessment of what was just shared by the EPA representative?
Ryan?
Committee, I'd just like to say this. It's been a long-standing conversation. And we come to these meetings and we basically revisit the same thing that's been said. But I want to tell you point blank, the only agency that's put money into solid waste is BIA recently and USDA. We need more success. We need people not coming here talking about there's these opportunities, there's environmental justice grants. We're looking for them. There's just not been enough success that actually has put money into this, except for what the tribes do and USDA and recently BIA. I would implore everybody here to have a success to come to the table with soon. Some real money that puts into this besides ARPA money that's a given. Of course, we're going to use that to put towards this, but not just talk about not just talk about there's these opportunities, but really come to the table and say the next time we talk is like, hey, here's the EJ grant that we brought to the table that did this. We at EPA were able to really push and acquire this for the tribes, and I would just like to see more successes than the same conversation. USDA was the people that put money forth before. I already said that. BIA was the people that put money forth before. Since that time, there hasn't been another entity except the tribes themselves. So I implore everybody to work diligently and hard to bring a success to the table. And not a success in just ARPA money, because that's easy. It's easy to use ARPA money. It's hard to go out and get real money. It's hard to get those grant monies that are out there. And that's what I implore everybody to all the stakeholders besides the tribes to bring there. Let's not pick the low hanging fruit. Let's get that one way up on top of the tree and bring that to the table, because that's where it's at. That's how we can progress.
Representative Clifford.
Mr. Chairman, tribal representatives, my other question is, do we even have a tax structure? And is it safe to say, do you agree with the assessment that we have a goofy tax structure here at Wind River with our tribes?
Representative Ellis or Senator Ellis.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify. I think when I was saying goofy, I don't think that the tribe has imposed a goofy tax structure. I think the barriers that have been handed down by Supreme Courts limiting the tribe's ability to tax non-Indians for sales occurring on the reservation. They're supposed to collect those and give them to the State Department of Revenue. We've really tied the hands of tribes to generate revenue. And I think that was those are federal limitations, not tribal decisions. So I want to be clear that that was my comment.
So the question is still on the table to Chairman St. Clair.
Representative
Or-
Clifford, if I may, Chairman.
Councilman, you.
In my opinion, I think just like what Ryan is saying is, we can use ARPA funds to do that, and that is easy. The difference between what we're doing now and what we've been doing is what we've been doing has gotten us to this point where we're in trouble. There's no funding, where the tribes are still putting in monies equally, supposed to be equally, they're supposed to be contributing equally to this program that is for the benefit of both tribes and for the entire community. It's really shaky and fragile. That's what's gotten us to at this point. The difference between what we're doing back then and what we're doing now is with the help of Allison and the Solid Waste Committee, which I'm a part of, and a few of the other councilmen here are a part of, is we're actually getting the gears turning again into what we're able to do. Now, I'm all for whatever the tribes can do, but I'm also all for trying to just push the envelope and figure out how else we can fund this thing. And that's happening now. So the Solid Waste Committee is actually, we're opening up talks between the tribes and between the EPA. And I just wanted to applaud Allison for doing what she does, because she's the one that brings us together. And that hasn't happened before. If you look at what happened before, it was each tribe to do their own thing, and then hopefully you guys can kind of agree on it later. And if it doesn't, then but like I said, that's what's gotten us to where we are. But what's happening now is we're getting cooperation, we're getting talks, we're getting negotiations, we're getting a direction. And the policy that we're coming up with for the tribal law and order code for the solid waste is totally new. That's hard to do once you have two tribal governments trying to agree on what should happen for the community. That's very hard to do. That's being done. That's an amazing task that the Solid Waste Committee has kind of taken on, and we're accomplishing. And again, if it wasn't for Allison, I think it would be both tribes just kind of doing whatever they're doing. We definitely needed something to kind of tie the loose ends there so that we can kind of talk together. And at the very least, we're doing that. And like I said, I want to push the envelope to figure out how else we can get this thing self-sustaining, because right now it's failing. We have 3 people doing the job for the entire solid waste, which at least for the intertribal, I can't speak for Northern Arapaho's solid waste program, but the intertribal solid waste program, 3 people to do 2 million acres. I mean, it's impossible. So whatever we can do to find funding to make this program more robust, I'm all for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have one more question of you. Thank you for that, Councilman. The other question I have is, in your opinion, since you sit on the committee, I'd like to know, Mr. Chairman, what is your assessment of the county? Are they at the table? Is there any frustrations? Are you, I'd like to know your assessment.
In
with
the very
county.
beginning, Representative Clifford, committee, in the very beginning, yeah. They've been noticeably absent, and it might not be entirely all their fault. It might be the tribes just kind of realizing that they might not, be totally open to discussing things with us. Because what we did want from the county was what their enforcement policies, what they do, what they don't do, what works for them. It didn't go very far. So I think the tribes are used to the county not being at the table. So I think it's kind of on our end where we're like, well, we're not going to include them because they're not going to be there anyway. I do think that they do need to be there. They should offer at least what they do in terms of guidance. And I think that would be very helpful for the tribes, because right now we kind of don't have guidance. It's up to us to figure it out. But if they have something that works, I think we should be open to using whatever they use that works. Also, I think they could help us somewhere along the lines with funding. I mean, I think they almost have a responsibility to help us, especially once you start thinking non-natives come from off the reservation within Fremont County to dump their trash. That's been going on for I don't know, decades. So once you think about that, they do owe us for all those violations that they know has been happening. Construction companies do it all the time. They should have a seat at the table, at least some responsibility there.
So in our, Councilman, in our last Tribal Relations Committee meeting, we talked about solid waste. We noted that we don't have any members from either tribe on the the Fremont County Solid Waste Board. And we really need that. And so could I ask you guys to make some recommendations? And I'm happy to work with the commissioners because we really need representation from the tribes on that solid waste board. And I brought that up to them and I brought it up to commissioners, and I would just bring it up to you and ask for some help. And I'm happy to help get some people on there. We need to do that. Thank you. Allison, any other thoughts? Janice, feel free to chime in here if you'd like. I think you're probably in different places.
Yeah, I'd just like to kind of echo, the efforts EPA is doing. We are looking right now at the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I've been just reached out this morning actually with my management to try to evaluate where that money may be coming. We are expecting an infusion of funding. So, similar to the ARPA funds, we are in a unique situation right now where we're going to have money that, we don't know that we'll ever see again. So, EPA normally has not been given, funding from Congress to support tribal solid waste. Maybe 20 years ago we did. And even the states, we don't support solid waste. That's never been something that Congress has given EPA any funding for that. So, Ryan, you're correct. We just haven't had funding that we've been allowed to do that with. And that's where with the environmental justice grants, there are some unique opportunities right now that we are trying our best to be able to leverage and prioritize within the region and in headquarters. So we're continuing to again fight for those funds. So we'll do what we can. Again, once we read, the language and what ends up, passing, what we will be able to do. So we definitely want to be here to help, help develop a sustainable system between both tribes so that in the future, we don't have this repeat with open dumping. Try to clean these up and maintain and manage these transfer stations to stop this from the future.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I just wanted to offer a law student who I recently got to know sent me a copy of a law review article she wrote, and the whole theme of it is Wind River dumps trash to treasure, and she does a really good job of laying out all the authority. But one thing in here I did star that I wanted to share was that the EPA in 2019 spent $217 million out of nearly a $9 billion budget to implement federal programs in Indian country. So just kind of, and that's just, I think all programs, not just solid waste management, but I think the frustrating part about the EJ grants is they are one time you have to apply, you have to compete for them versus kind of a systemic acknowledgement within the EPA about some of those very environmental justice issues within the budgeting, the year-to-year planning and budgeting. So I appreciate the grants, but if there's any way to relay to your bosses that the bigger solution, I think, is in these EPA budgets, I think that might be more impactful for the long term. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Pearson, any other comments from Denver?
I think that's it.
Yep.
But Allison, yep.
Just gonna say, yeah, thank you. And we agree. And it's interesting because I think Janice and I talk about that regularly. How do we make it so that EP has a budget for this? And hopefully I've heard tribes saying it at the top too. So hopefully eventually someone will listen and we'll get some momentum.
Emily, if we could have you give your assessment of where we're at on this effort.
Sure.
A few questions for us.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Emily Solai, Special Counsel to the Governor. The Governor did receive the letter, so thank you to the Northern Arapaho Business Council as well as the Wind River Intertribal Council, specifying that this continues to be a priority for each of the tribes. It continues to be a priority for the Governor's office as well, as I know it is for this committee and for the EPA. This has been a topic between the governor and each of the councils, I think in each quarterly meeting that we've held this year. And as Allison mentioned, the governor's office is involved in that interjurisdictional group that meets to discuss solutions to this problem. I think there's the good news is that there's broad consensus that this is an interjurisdictional problem. We need an interjurisdictional solution to that problem. And I'll echo Ryan and thanking, or Councilman Ute and thanking Allison and bringing us all together and keeping us moving in that regard. I've been asked to speak today about the state's ARPA funds and the plans for coming up with spending decisions for those funds. Obviously, funding has been a consistent topic of discussion for solid waste management because that is what is necessary to keep the ball moving. Quick basic on ARPA. I think we're all very familiar with that acronym, but American Rescue Plan Act, similar to the CARES Act from 2020, the state and each of the tribes received funding through the American Rescue Plan Act, sort of in 3 buckets. In one bucket, we received funding specific to programs that we are required to administer according to federal criteria. So we can't use that funding for something other than what the feds designated it for. Rental assistance is a good example of that. Some of that funding went into grant programs. Most of them are competitive grant programs. And another bucket went directly to the state and directly to each of the tribes. We have more discretion to make decisions around how to spend that money. We're still constrained by certain limitations within the federal law and in regulations, but we do have more discretion. The state received $1.7 billion in ARPA funds. That's more than we received in CARES funds. We also have a much longer time to spend ARPA dollars than we did with CARES. So we have until 2024, the end of 2024 to obligate ARPA funding, and we have until the end of 2026 to finally spend that funding down. So the good news, as opposed to CARES Act, we have a longer period to make more methodical decisions on how to invest ARPA dollars in this state for long-term benefits for all of our constituents. Another difference between the CARES Act and ARPA is that towns, counties, and cities in Wyoming also received direct ARPA funds. So it was not just the state and the tribes, which was the case for the CARES Act in Wyoming, but for ARPA dollars, counties, cities, and towns also received direct funding. It's a pretty broad range in amounts. The lowest amount was around $700. That went to a town in Wyoming. The highest amount was $19 million, which went to a county in Wyoming. So as I said, we're taking a methodical approach in determining how to spend the state's $1.7 billion. That approach was announced jointly by the governor and legislative leadership in June. And how it will work is that the governor will present a recommendation for ARPA investment to the legislature in early December. And then, of course, the legislature, as the branch with authority to appropriate and to create programs, will be the ultimate decision maker in how these ARPA dollars are invested. The governor's been working on his recommendation plan since ARPA was passed in March. It's begun with stakeholder surveys. So we sought input from the governor's cabinet, other elected officials, local government officials, nonprofit organizations, professional associations. Each of the tribes participated in that survey as well. So we took feedback around what are the needs of our state and what are some long-term investments that can address those needs. And from all of that feedback, we created broad goals. So buckets of goals for how ARPA dollars can be used to meet the different needs that were identified by all of the stakeholders. The proposal, which included those broad goals, was submitted to JAC in June, so that's a public document. But there's one goal in particular that I would like to speak about, and it relates to this topic, and that is the goal to invest state ARPA dollars directly into counties, cities, and to the tribes. We're in the design stage right now, so we know what the goal is, but now we're working on designing the program that can accomplish that goal. And that design is exactly what will be in the governor's recommendation, not just for this goal, but for each of the goals identified in June that is submitted to JAC in December. So I will give sort of an overview of what the program design looks like right now, but with the huge caveat that it's all subject to change, right? This is currently what it looks like, still undergoing conversations internally and with stakeholders. ultimately subject to the governor's review and approval, and then ultimately in the next session, subject to the approval of the legislature. But the thought right now for the program that would invest dollars to county, cities, and each of the tribal governments includes a proposal stage. So there would be a proposal by the eligible government entity about the project that they would like to fund with state ARPA dollars and how that project provides the long-term benefit to their communities. In making decisions on those proposals, certain criteria we're thinking would be prioritized, and that criteria I think matches really nicely with the solid waste project. One of the criteria is partnership between multiple jurisdictions. So prioritizing proposals that don't just benefit one jurisdiction and aren't just supported by one jurisdiction, but instead have the kind of interjurisdictional support that this solid waste project has. Another criteria for prioritizing proposals would be that one-time funding is sufficient. So that's something that I think applies at least to the cleanup efforts. It doesn't solve the second problem of how do we have ongoing sustainable waste management. But if that were something that could be created before, assuming that this goal and this model goes into place, if there were a plan for sustainability prior to the proposal phase, I think it would strengthen this project within this program goal. Another feature of the current design is that it would be a joint investment model, which is something that we've heard from each of the tribes, expecting that we all want to leverage the funds that the state received and that each of the local government entities received. And so there would be some kind of match requirement for projects that are funded. And the current model also contemplates creating a new decision-making body with temporary staff full-time for that decision-making body, which is pretty different than how the CARES funding was distributed. And again, this is just the idea phase, but recognizing that a full-time board that is purely dedicated to making these investment decisions, full-time staff that is purely dedicated to doing outreach in local communities about this program and how to apply and helping with the applications and making solid recommendations on those applications would be more efficient, but also result in some better decision-making, some more methodical decision-making. The thought is that both the board and the staff would represent certain regions of the state, represent each of the eligible governments, represent certain industries, some expertise, so that, for example, a board could include someone that represents the interests of counties, someone that represents the interests of cities, someone that represents the interests of tribes, someone with expertise in economic development, someone with expertise in public services, to make sure that the decision makers, that everybody's at the table that could benefit from the program, and that the decision makers have the kind of experiences that are necessary to make good decisions on where to invest these funds. So again, I'll note preliminary design model, right? This isn't final. This is still in draft stage. We're continuing to discuss the current model with our cabinet, with stakeholders. Ultimately, it will be subject to the governor's review, and ultimately it will go to the legislature for consideration. But that's the thought right now. And like I said, I do think that the current program design is very consistent with the waste management project as we've heard it today. There's multiple jurisdictions involved. There's an intent for each of the tribes to also invest funding, and maybe we could get that intent from the county and other jurisdictions that are benefited by this program. And as we've heard, there also might be other funding as well. So I don't want to say that state ARPA funding is the end all be all. It's a one-time opportunity that we want to make sure that we use wisely. And so I hope that it is available for this project. But as Allison stated, there might be environmental justice grants, there might be programs within the infrastructure bill, and maybe that can be leveraged along with state ARPA dollars to create that more sustainable plan that CFO Ortiz mentioned. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Emily, thanks for that, and particularly on helping us understand how the governor's unrolling that with that group and in leveraging funds. Committee, any questions for Emily on this topic? Thank you. Okay, Emily, job well done. Thank you. Committee, I think we're at that point in the day. We're through the discussion on solid waste. Chairman Ellis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank Allison and Janice for being online and continuing the conversation with us. You know, certainly we're a state legislative entity. We don't have any jurisdiction over the federal EPA. It still means a lot to me that you both came out to Wind River a few years ago and looked at the dump sites and that you've continued this work. So I just want you to know that our frustration is more, not with you, but certainly at a larger level. I just really want you to know how much we appreciate your efforts to keep this going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The water's pretty deep that we're running in. It's up over our waist. And so it may not look like we're going very fast, but we are going. And so I think that that's a big deal. And I could extend my appreciation. So committee, I think we are at that point that we're actually even a little ahead of schedule, but we'll go ahead and break for lunch. We'll be back here. Oh, I'm sorry, Chairman St. Clair, please.
You're ignoring me. I'm just kidding. I just wanted to make some closing remarks, if
Please.
that's okay with you,
Would you please?
Mr. Chairman. First of all, the solid waste initiative for cleanup and dumping is kind of a one-time thing. So it is probably appropriate to use the ARPA funds for that. But in a broader perspective, we thank the EPA for the gap funding, because the gap funding is reestablishing our existing committee that's existed even before the tribes parted ways in 2014, but then we got back together in 2017. Before that split, EPA had funded the program on the reservation for environmental issues, not just solid waste, but for all environmental issues. The gap funding helps us to get that organization going again. So once that funding is depleted, and it won't take long, that our intent is to apply for permanent funding from APA to fund our REC, Environmental Commission, in the future permanently. So I think it's a first good sign, a good step from EPA to grant this initial award, but that's just the first step. Our goal is to get our whole commission going back into operation, and functioning for issues even outside of solid waste. Like I said earlier, the issues of hazardous materials out in the oil fields, pollution of our waters and streams, and getting that whole environmental program going forward. So that's our, I'm hopefully speaking for both tribes, that we would like to continue forward in this along this vein. And I realize that EPA has not done a lot recently, but of course we have to remember that the tribes were split for a while, and there was no, the EPA couldn't fund one tribe or the other, and so now we're back together. So hopefully, we've corrected that situation, and we will look forward. And I thank Allison for her efforts so far.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for everybody's help on that this morning. So with that said, Madam Chairman, we'll go ahead and break for lunch till 1:30 and pick up the work when we get back at that time. Thank you.